Hello and welcome back to EOC Prep Videos. I'm Mr. Civics, and last time we talked about what led to war. We really won't go into the details of war, but spoiler, we won the war. Okay, so now we need to talk about how our Constitution was formed. Why did we write the Constitution? What was governing us during the war? There's a question you should ask yourself. So as we broke free from Great Britain, and in the Declaration of Independence, it says, we are to dissolve the bonds that connected us to Great Britain and kind of form our own government. Well, out of that pledge to do so came the Articles of Confederation. And that was the beginning. Okay, we had the Continental Congress set up to govern and lead the country through the war and kind of get the colonies transitioning into statehood. And it was the first governing document for our country, but it was insufficient. Okay, it did set up a legislative branch, a lawmaking branch, because obviously, if you're going to want to have a successful society, you're going to want to have some laws so each person can have their individual rights protected through those laws. But it was limited in what it could do. Okay, it only really set up the legislative branch, which is the lawmaking branch. And I know that if your parents just gave you rules, all right, and they probably do, a bunch of rules, but never enforced the rules or punished you for breaking the rules, you would have no motivation to follow the rules. So the Articles of Confederation did not set up a system for enforcing the laws that they made or judging or interpreting the laws that were made. So the states were like, yeah, that's a great rule, but great law, but we're not going to follow that one. So it really limited the power of the federal government. They did not have power to tax through the articles. They had to ask the states, hey, can you tax your people so we can pay the army, which led to Shays' Rebellion because Daniel Shays came back from war. He's a farmer. His farm's being taken from him unless he pays taxes. Well, the problem is he wanted to get paid from the military service, but they didn't have money to pay him, so he started this rebellion. So that demonstrated the weakness of the Articles. There was not a central leadership. Okay, there was not one leader of the executive branch. There was not a national court system. So you can see that there was just very little power in the federal government through the Articles of Confederation, which the states wanted that. Okay, that's actually say, well, why would they create something that had little power? Well, look what they just came from, right? They came from what they believed to be a tyrant and exercised too much power over the colonies. So they wanted to create a government that didn't have as much central power and give the states and allow them to maintain their identity as colonies and into states. So they did want to have a limited power in the federal government, but the power was so limited that it could not do certain things that was necessary for it to do. And so what do? Once they realized that it was too weak, all right, and they have Shays' Rebellion that shows that the federal government really didn't have a great way of running an army, all right. They had to ask states for militias, all right, and they didn't have a way of paying people that they needed to pay. They said, well, all right, we need to revise the Articles of Confederation. The problem is they also put this little nugget in there that says, okay, if you want to revise the Articles, everybody needs to agree. So it needs to be a unanimous decision to revise the Articles. And I don't know if you've ever seen this happen, but like maybe you have a family of 3 or 4, and they're like, all right, what does everybody want for dinner? How many times did everybody say the same thing? Probably never. All right. So how are you going to get 13 colonies to agree to change anything, right? So they were like, well, this isn't going to work. So we can't revise them. So let's get rid of them, replace them with a constitution. And they did that, called for constitutional convention, and the delegates got together and like, all right, we're going to craft a constitution that gives a little bit more power to the federal government, still allowing states to have their power, and there are articles that make sure that happen. And so they get together and like, all right, let's sit down and write this constitution. And what was different about the Constitution than the Articles of Confederation? That's what we really need to kind of wrap up with. Is first, the Constitution had 3 branches. All right, Article 1, 2, and 3 set up 3 branches of government. Now, whose idea was that? Right, Montesquieu. We talked about him 2 weeks in a row now, or three videos in a row now. So Montesquieu came up with the idea of 3 different branches of government: a legislative branch, lawmaking branch, executive branch, which enforces laws, and a judicial branch, which interprets laws. Correct. So the first article, the legislative branch, set up the lawmaking houses, and the Great Compromise. They weren't sure, unicameral, bicameral. How are they going to manage these houses? How are we going to determine how many votes each state gets? We have the larger states wanted it done by population. The smaller states said each state should have the same amount of representation. So they came up with this system. It's bicameral, where they have one house that each state gets two senators, and that's the upper house. The Senate gets 2 senators, and then the lower house, each state's representation is based on population. Correct. So upper house Senate, lower house House of Representatives, and each one has their own way of determining how many representatives are in each assembly for that. So Senate or House of Representatives. All right, so then that's Article 1, all right? Article 2 set up the executive branch. That was created the office of the president, the chief executive, all right, commander-in-chief over the military, the law enforcing branch of government. And then Article 3 created the judicial branch, where the Supreme Court presides, and they interpret the Constitution, okay? So that's their job, and we do know, we'll talk about this later, but how long each person serves in their role. The judicial branch really is unique as their lifetime terms, because they're trying to, it's a fantasy, but to stay non-political. We know that doesn't happen. But so you have those 3 branches of government created in the first 3 articles. So then that's all we're really going to talk about today, because that's probably the extent of the attention that you're going to give to this video today. Anyway, so that's just a quick summary of how we got to the Constitution. Okay, the articles were weak. You say, get that weak stuff out of here, right? Get the weak stuff out of here. They needed to be able to tax. Taxes aren't bad if they're used for good purposes. Okay, so they needed to be able to tax to pay for certain things that people need to improve their lives, or infrastructure, all right, and to protect the country. So taxes were needed, and just other things. So they had to go from a weak Articles of Confederation to a stronger Constitution, which did work on the system of a federal system, which divides power between the state and federal government. But that's another lesson. All right, I'm past my time for you today. I hope that you are getting something out of this, preparing for the EOC. If you're watching this, you'll be super prepared for the EOC, and I will see you in the next video.